Hello, I'm Sydney with CUTV News, and today we're going to speak about the 6th annual Homelessness Marathon that's happening here in Montreal. I have two people that are involved with the marathon. I have coordinator Gretchen King. She's the coordinator of this year's marathon, and I'm also going to speak with Irkar. He's the coordinator of the Native Solidarity News on CKUT. So thanks guys very much for speaking with us today. I guess we should start off by speaking about the marathon, its history, and what kind of role both of you play in helping this get off the ground this year.
Well, the marathon itself originated in the States with a community broadcaster who felt that it was absolutely, a need to fill a void that existed in the mainstream media there. That, the Homelessness Marathon in and of itself was generated because the mainstream media lacks so much space and attention to homeless and poor people. And that carries over to the media here in Canada as well. If you think about the sorts of reports that you see on poverty and homelessness, it's largely around Christmas time that you generally hear about poor people and everyone's need to support them and aid them. But generally throughout the rest of the year, you rarely hear about it. Now in Canada, one of the coldest countries in the world, housing is not a guaranteed right, whether it's wintertime or summertime here. And that unfortunately does lead to death and does lead to people living in situations that they would rather not be experiencing. It's a shame that in Canada, if you choose to go into a shelter, that shelter might be infested by bugs, or perhaps that shelter doesn't have a ramp to aid you with your wheelchair and getting into the shelter, or perhaps you have your children with you. You can't walk into a shelter in Canada with children. And that's unfortunate. So if a family is poor and homeless, they can't go into a shelter system, certainly not a man, a woman, and their children. And there's very, very many other barriers we can discuss with regard to services. And I think all of these issues are critical things that we should be talking about throughout the year because it's something that poor people face every day in this country. And unfortunately, we don't have that kind of attention. So 11 years ago in the States, a community broadcaster started broadcasting overnight and making a space for homeless and poor people to take to the airwaves and speak directly to the experience of being poor and homeless in the United States. And here in Canada, we've done the same thing for 6 years outside of the Native Friendship Center here in Montreal. And we've had more than 30 stations across the country every year carry the broadcast. And this year, we're confirming about 35 rebroadcasters in nearly every province and territory. We'll be broadcasting from sunset to sunrise in Montreal. And we will be outside in the snow with a table and chairs and microphone. Anyone's welcome to come to 2001 Saint Laurent, just one block north of Saint Laurent Metro, and sit on the table and speak to their experience being poor or homeless in Canada. It's a marathon that addresses different topics every hour, critical topics like looking at the numbers of homeless people in Canada in different provinces, critically thinking about numbers. Are they a good way to understand poverty and homelessness? We have panels on racism and poverty. We have panels on refugees in the streets. Many people think that Canada is a country that refugees can come to with open arms, but many of our migrants and refugees end up in the streets using street services as well, and that's a topic you never hear about. We also have an open mic at midnight that any street artist, musician, poet with a poverty tip can come and participate for that hour. It will be hosted by Off the Hook, which is one of the major shows in Montreal, one of the most popular shows in Montreal. And so we'll be outside there inviting listeners to call in and broadcast and participate in the broadcast from across Canada as well. We're outside sitting on the streets, hosting every hour with our guests sitting on the streets with us, but also with guests on the phone calling in from across Canada. And then, of course, any listener calling in on the toll-free number and joining us as well.
Great. And Irkar, you're one of the coordinators for one of the hours that Gretchen mentioned, the Indigenous Hour. So can you talk a little bit about that and the role that the Native Friendship Center does play?
Well, the Native Friendship Center has recently just got its funding cut by Services Canada. They're pretty much the only Native Friendship Center in this area that deals with natives of all nations. Like, they can come to the Native Friendship Center and they can deal with anything that they have to deal with. If they need help with employment, or they have problems with diabetes, they know where to go. Mm-hmm. And the Native Friendship Center has been an institution for about over 30 years now, and I used to go there when I was a little boy. And it's a very important institution, and unfortunately, when Services Canada cuts the funding of the Native Friendship Centre, everyone suffers because they don't just serve the Native population; they serve the non-Native population as well. And to have the marathon outside the Native Friendship Centre is also drawing attention to Native homelessness. It's a very serious problem, especially in Montreal. If you're ever around Atwater and the park that's near the AMC, there's a lot of Native homeless, a lot of Native youth that are homeless as well. And we're going to be, in my hour especially, we're going to be focusing on what they're doing to get off the street, what they're doing to stay warm, because it's been an extraordinarily hard winter for the homeless this year.
15 storms.
15 storms, approximately with today's storm, probably about 280 centimeters so far this winter. So it's been especially hard for the youth and for the Native homeless on the streets because they have no place to go.
Well, speaking about these weather factors, there's some interesting elements that are happening with the marathon. Namely, you guys are going to be broadcasting outdoors for 14 hours, and there's no ads, there's no commercials, there's no. You're also not going to be broadcasting with any commercial stations. So, with all these different elements, they're very interesting. What importance does it play in the message you guys want to deliver with the marathon?
I think it needs to send a message that we're out there experiencing what homeless people experience. It's like that is predominantly why it is outside, and it's in one of the coldest months of the year, is because we want to show the audience that experiencing this kind of cold weather, what homelessness people go through is important. That just because Canadian society being one of the richest societies on the planet, there's still a lot of people that are very disadvantaged, be it Native, be it Muslim, be it any creed. No matter what, we have to understand that Canada is not such a multicultural society. It's more just a classist society. The rich get richer, and the poor get poorer. You rarely see it in a Canadian budget where there's money set aside for the homeless, taking care of the homeless, making sure that they can get off the street, and that's what the marathon. That's what the marathon does. It exposes this problem to anyone who wants to listen, and I think it's very important for that.
I think also what becomes very evident when you listen to the marathon for the 14 hours is we're inviting everyone that does tune in to stay up with us all night so that they too can understand what it's like to not sleep well. I think a lot of people take advantage of the fact that, they go home every night and take for granted that they can sit in their bed and get warm and cozy and have a good night's rest. Not everybody in Canada can. And I think most people forget that sleeping well is a privilege. And so when you tune into the Homelessness Marathon and you hear us struggling to stay up and struggling to host live radio 14 hours into the program, it's very evident when you hear the producers on the mic, when you hear street people on the mic with us all night long. You very much are brought to the experience of what it's like staying up and trying to survive the night in Canada. I think that's one of the critical reasons it happens outside. The other reason that it happens outside of the Native Friendship Centre is that there is a zero tolerance policy inside of the Friendship Centre, and we do want to try to be as open and as welcoming to any street person as possible. And so regardless of their state or condition, or whether or not they would be welcomed into the Friendship Centre, they do have a place outside on the table with us. And that's true for anyone passing by, regardless of their experience. And the same is for the toll-free number. Anyone can go to a payphone, use it on their cell phone, use it on their home phone. Anyone can call that toll-free number. We try to make participation in the marathon as equal as possible for anyone, regardless of their status in Canada. And unfortunately, the mainstream media does not afford that sort of equality year-round. If they did, maybe we would all be a little bit educated better about what it's like being poor or what it's like growing up in a class-based society like Canada.
Is that one of the reasons why you choose not to broadcast on commercial radio? Or
Yeah, there's no way that we could get the important messages out that we have to share in the Homelessness Marathon, or the experiences that need to be shared during the Homelessness Marathon. There's no way that could be packaged on a for-profit radio station. There's way too much advertising, and then a lot of what gets said would not necessarily be approved by advertisers. These are not the happy images that they want their products associated with. These are the dark, grim realities of Canada.